Hey friends, Bob Turner sitting here in the library. You know, one of the most common things people say to me is, well, you're a librarian. You just sit around and read all day? No. Librarians want you to know, no, that's not what we do. We have a lot to do here. But one reason you might envy people who get to sit around and read all day is because it sounds so quiet and it sounds peaceful. And that's our modern understanding of reading, is that reading is something you can do to get away, to be alone, and to have some peace and quiet. But that's not necessarily the way people read in the Bible. In the Bible, reading is something that is often done in public, and it's something that's done as a community. For example, one of the great reading stories of the Old Testament is when Ezra stands up and reads the law in front of the people. Or even think about a more unusual one. What about in the book of Daniel, where all these banquet guests see handwriting on a wall? And what do we learn about that one? It requires interpretation. What about in the ministry of Jesus? Luke chapter 4. Jesus stands up, he reads from the scriptures, and then there's an interpretation that comes from the congregation, and then Jesus responds with his own interpretation. There's a back and forth because of the oral presentation of Scripture. In the book of Acts, the Ethiopian eunuch is reading Scripture out loud. He's reading Isaiah 53, and he's making it known orally. And then Philip and him have an encounter. Philip says, do you understand what you read? He says, well, I can't understand unless somebody helps me interpret it. What we find here is that when we read the Bible publicly, it requires that we interpret the Bible communally. That there's no such thing as just curling up with the Bible, asking, what does this mean for me? And then being certain that that's what the text should mean for all people. Shouldn't we discern God's will for us as a church by reading the Bible together as a church? Maybe this is why Paul tells Timothy, commit yourself to the public reading of Scripture, and why Paul and the writer of Revelation seem to have in mind that those letters would be read for the congregation. That when we read the Bible publicly, we will interpret it communally. I'd like that to be a challenge for you as you work with your congregations and in your ministry contexts. Read the Bible publicly. This is helpful especially for people who may not read well, or even for some of our children who don't read at all. This also helps some of us who interpret the Bible to remember that we interpret on behalf of a group, of a community, of a diverse group with diverse needs and diverse appreciation of how God is working in the world. Let's interpret it as a community, not just as an individual. I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope to see you next time.